how to stop anxiety and fear. If you'd like to move from being anxious, fearful, avoidant in your behaviors to feeling relaxed, confident, able to take action and move forward, this video is for you. I'm Jonathan Butler, and I am the founder of My Fit Mind. And at My Fit Mind, we help people to overcome anxiety, to overcome fear, and move forward, taking those steps forward in their lives. I'm also the author of this Amazon best-selling book called Bye Bye Anxiety, Your 4 Steps to Greater Confidence, Calmness, and Contentment. And in this video and in this series of videos, I'm going to share with you all of those 4 steps, everything you need to know to move from where you are to where you want to be, moving up those steps. So in today's first video, I'm going to share with you the fundamentals that you need to understand about your mind. And don't worry, I am not going to get technical. I am not going to get scientific, because this is frankly one of the biggest issues about helping people with their emotional thoughts about things that are going on in their mind. Too many people want to talk in complex, technical, scientific terms about the mind. And I spent a long time living near the beautiful city and living indeed in the city of Oxford. And I remember talking to a professor of psychology at Oxford University. He told me, Jonathan, the mind is such a complicated thing. You can never fully understand it. I've spent my whole life, my whole career, and I still don't fully understand it. Well, yes, great, the mind is incredibly complicated. But you know what? So is a modern car. A car is an incredibly complicated piece of machinery. But do I need to understand how all of those things on a car work in intricate detail to be able to drive a car well? No, I don't. I simply need to understand the core things, the core steps. What are the real things I need to understand how to drive a car? And it's just the same with your mind. So in this video, in my 4 steps, I take away all of that complexity, all that mumbo jumbo, and just explain to you what you need to know to be a good driver of your mind, just like you can easily learn to be a good driver of a car. So the first of these is that while the mind is complicated, actually its key functions, what it's trying to do, is incredibly simple and consistent. And the first of these that you really need to understand if you suffer from anxiety is that you suffer from anxiety because your mind thinks that creating fear, making you anxious, is somehow trying to help you. It makes you think that it's protecting you from something. That's why it's doing it. It's as simple as that. Your mind is trying to protect you from perceived threats around you. And the reality of this is that you will probably have taken on board those thoughts about yourself in your childhood. Because, you know, we talk about when we're children, how we are sponge-like, we absorb things. And that's, you know, we learn how to do things. And we can learn things so quickly as a child. We learn how to walk, we learn how to talk, we learn how to eat. We learn things from our environment around us. And while much of that is good, if we're living in an environment where there is anxiety, where there is fear, maybe where there are some bad things going on, as a child, we take that on board as well. We take that on board. And it's not necessarily always terrible things. It's more about the significance that the child attaches to how the child feels. So if a child feels fearful and anxious, if you grew up in an environment, if you grew up feeling fearful and anxious, you will likely develop into a fearful and anxious adult. Now, the good news is this, is that that fear, that anxiety you have is not natural. You were not born with it, okay? When you were born, you were only born being fearful of 2 things. We're only born being fearful of loud noises, understandably, and we're born being fearful of heights, because they are things that we have learnt through evolution, are things that signify danger for us. So that's understandable. We're not born being fearful of flying. We're not born being fearful of going outside. We're not born being fearful of people, whatever the fear that you have is. So we weren't born with that. So the good news is, just as you learn that fear, you can also unlearn that fear and take on board a different reality, a different perception of what is happening around you. Okay. And the second thing that you really need to understand about your mind, as well as the fact that it thinks it's protecting you from something, is that the real power, the real magic in your mind doesn't happen in your conscious mind, your rational, your thinking mind. It happens in your subconscious mind, your emotional mind. Okay. And no one teaches you in school how to work with your emotional mind. They try and teach us facts, figures, processes, all those things. But the reality is that how we think, feel, and act is largely controlled in our subconscious mind. Okay. So to make real change, you have to make change in your subconscious mind. And as I talk to you through this series about the techniques I use, you will come to understand why some traditional, typical therapies that are trying to appeal to your logical, rational mind are simply not going to be effective, because they're not making your subconscious mind feel that way. If you feel anxious, it's because your subconscious mind doesn't feel safe. So you've got to make your subconscious mind feel safe. So I said before about, you don't need to be an engineer. You don't need to be a mechanic to know how to drive a car. And you don't need to be a psychologist. You don't need to be a neuroscientist to understand how to make changes in your mind. You simply need to understand the core controls. So just like in your car, you have a steering wheel, you have gears, you have brakes, you have indicators, but your core controls are your wheel, your brakes, your gears. That's the core things that you're using to control that car. And your accelerator, of course, or the gas if you're American. Okay, so those are the core things that you need to understand. So in your mind, what are the core things you need to understand? What are those core controls, just like you've got in your car? And they are these. First of all, it is the images that you have in your mind, the images that we create, the pictures that we create. Okay, that is a control for our mind. If our mind has fearful images, negative images about places, people, situations, it will keep us in fear. The second control of your mind is the words that you use and the words that you hear, because words are incredibly powerful. They are incredibly powerful. The words that you use have impact. Words are powerful tools or harmful weapons, depending upon how you use them. So when people talk about sticks and stones might break my bones, but calling names won't hurt me, well, that is just BS, right? That is just so untrue. Words are powerful. Words can lift you up, or words can pull you down. So words are incredibly important. The third key control of your mind is repetition. Familiarity, because the more we tell ourselves something, the more we hear something, the more familiar we become with something, the more we're able to accept it, the more we are able to accept that. So those are the key controls of our mind. All that complexity, you boil it down to what comes out of your mouth, the words that come out of your mouth, the words that come into your ears, and the pictures that you create in your mind, the things that you allow yourself to see. Okay, so what does that mean? So what happens then with these words and pictures is that we have associations. We have associations. So think about some of the associations that you might have. We have associations for all sorts of things. A classic one for us might be if we hear a piece of music, if we hear a song on the radio, we may not have heard that for 20 or 30 years, but if we heard that song at a time in our life when something significant was happening, that song will immediately create an association with what was happening at that time, whether that be good or bad. If it was a happy time, maybe when we met a partner, make us happy, make us smile. If it was a sad time, when maybe a loss in our life, it'll make us sad. So those associations of what we hear, what we see, are incredibly important and incredibly powerful. And it's no coincidence that marketers, that songwriters try and create these associations. It gets stuck in our mind. It draws us towards it and wants us to buy things. So associations are really, really important. So if you are fearful, if you're anxious, you probably have lots of negative associations with things. Maybe it's going to a certain place, doing a certain thing. Maybe it's the association that going to work, going to a place, or going to interview, all these things have a negative connotation, a negative association. What if you could change that association? You could change that picture, change that thought. Because when you change the picture, when you change the words, you change the thought. And when you change the thought, you change the whole thinking and feeling. So let me give you an example from my own life. So back when I was a teenager, a few years ago now, I was an elite cyclist. I was a pretty good cyclist. I was a divisional champion. I was a regional champion. I won a national championship as well. So I was pretty good at what I did, but I wanted to be better. This is where I first got interested in psychology and how the mind worked, and hypnosis, and all of these good things to try and be better. Now, I had an association in my mind that I was no good at climbing hills, because I was told from very early on in my cycling career that I could never be any good at climbing hills. I was told I could never be any good at climbing hills because I was too big, I was too heavy, I didn't have the right physique for that. So guess what happened? I came to believe that I was no good at climbing hills. And every time I was in any kind of race, or even if I was out training, the sight of a hill would make me go into total negative, fearful mood. Even though I was an elite level cyclist, very good at what I did, I'd see this hill and I'd immediately my head would literally drop. I'd start going into the mode of thinking, there's a hill, I hate hills, how am I going to deal with this? I'm going to get left behind, I'm not sure I can do it, it's going to hurt. And all this negative thought, of course, created this self-fulfilling prophecy that I couldn't climb that hill. Many years later, when I'd stopped competing at that kind of level in cycling, I decided to challenge this, and I changed the picture. I changed my picture to being that when I saw a hill, I told myself that I loved hills. I created this positive impression that I loved hills. Hills for me, I love them. I love the feeling of climbing the hill. I love the achievement of climbing the hill. I'm strong, I can get up them. And now I am nowhere near the level I used to be. But when I see a hill, I love it. I go faster up it. My whole mindset changed. My whole mindset changed simply by changing the pictures and changing the words. So when I see a hill now, I make myself smile. I tell myself I love it. And I'm sending a message to my mind that I like it, telling a message to my mind to ignore any pain, to go harder, to go faster. And I go up those hills quicker. That is the basic principle of changing pictures, changing words. And of course, we can apply that to lots of things, whether it's fears of flying, fear of the dentist, fearing presenting to people. I can make people who would rather go to the dentist, have a root canal work done than present in front of an audience. By using these techniques, you can learn to love being in front of an audience. You can learn to love speaking in front of people. So you can train your mind. So I'm going to draw a line now under today's video and recap on the principles of your mind. And that is this, that while the mind is incredibly complex, the fears you have likely got will have been learnt, probably learnt in childhood, but they may have been learnt later in life because of a specific event, a specific trauma may have caused these fears as well. Okay, so they are learned behaviors, and they can easily be unlearned, and they can be replaced with more positive, helpful thoughts. And whatever it is you feel, whatever it is you think, you can break that association, you can change that association, and you can train your mind to be either indifferent or to even love the things that you now find yourself being scared of. And you can do that in months, if not weeks, by following the 4 steps I have. So if you like this video, please subscribe, hit that subscribe button down below so you'll get notified exactly when the next video in the series is coming out. Also down below, I give a link to my page, the Amazon page, where you can buy this book, so you can get all the details, all the handouts, all the workbooks that exist within there. So again, the book is on Amazon. It's called Bye Bye Anxiety: Your 4 Steps to Greater Confidence, Calmness and Contentment, from Jonathan Butler. So I hope you found the video really useful. I look forward to seeing you in the next video, where I'm going to explain to you what it is that's making you anxious and make sense of maybe what's going on for you as an individual in your life, why you are feeling fearful. Because when you understand that, you're ready to move on. Thanks for listening.